Carolina, and you're losing Latinos in Florida. But again, right, there's a lot of votes left. I'm not sure exactly what has been reported and what has, what the cities have looked like in Virginia. So there's a lot there. But I mean, I'd rather be in Donald Trump's seat in Mar-a-Lago than I would be in Harris's seat in D.C. tonight. I mean,
how iffy is it? It could still go either way?
Sure, certainly. But I mean, if you're looking for tea leaves and if you're looking for optimism, if you're a Republican, there's a lot of it out there on the board right now.
Well, and let's start with the opposite side of that, which is the Democrat side. Angie Nixon, when it comes to this presidential debate, what's on the table, the presidential race?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot is on the table, but I just want to warn folks, like, let's count every vote. Like, we can't just call it just yet. We want to just ensure that all, the votes are counted. The voters need to decide, and we need to just, like, let it play out a little bit.
Right, and the polls obviously have closed on the East Coast, Florida going to Donald Trump. You've been talking to people in Mar-a-Lago, so I imagine then this is good news for them. What's their take?
It is good news. I mean, exactly what you'd rather be right now in their shoes, given the data that we're seeing. But we can agree on this. Every vote should be counted. Every legally cast vote should be counted.
Yeah, okay. We haven't been able to agree on a whole lot, but at least we can agree on this. When it comes to some of the major issues that people voted on when it comes to this presidential race, what would you say would be the top two for Democrats?
I do think it is the affordability crisis. Again, corporate greed is at an all-time high, right? And just an overall attack on our freedoms here in the country. We see it oftentimes in Florida. Our women can't, do what we want to do here. We can't have bodily autonomy, and we also can't teach our children. They aren't free to learn true history, and so really it's just an attack on our freedoms here. And of course, attacks on the LGBTQ community.
And one of the things you guys can agree on is the affordability issue. When it comes to Republicans, just the top few quickly?
4 years of inflation. People know every day when they go to the grocery store, they go to buy food, they go to McDonald's, everything's expensive right now. It's very difficult. And wide open borders. And then the current administration looks the American people in the eye and say, we didn't open the borders. That's Donald Trump's fault. Everybody knows that's not true.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of opinions, a lot of facial expressions here showing that maybe we don't all agree. But we will get into all of this and the nitty-gritty a little bit more later on in the show. Back down to you guys.
Hey, we're having open conversations. Now, the U.S. Senate race has been called for Senator Rick Scott. Scott, who now served 2 decades in a statewide office without losing an election, including his time as governor. You can see here he wins 56% of the vote against Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. It wasn't even close. He wins easily by 13 percentage points there. Now, let's move on. How about another race in Florida? Actually, Jake Stofan has been at the Scott camp in Bonita Springs all day. And Jake, well, Scott pulled out a larger victory than the polls had predicted.
Yeah, it was quite an early night here with Senator Scott taking the stage to deliver his victory speech before 9 p.m. Polling had him up about 5, but he managed to pull off a decisive 13-point victory tonight. U.S. Senator Rick Scott is fresh off his first statewide win with a margin of greater than 2 points since first running for office in 2010. Scott addressed that fact at the beginning of his speech, noting, quote, "For once we did it before midnight." Scott already has his eye on another election, saying he plans to run for Republican Majority Leader in the U.S. Senate. He said Florida should be an example for Republicans across the country, and especially in Washington, D.C.
We need a Republican Party to start solving the problems of this country, and we have a significant number of problems. Florida is the center of the Republican Party of this country. Washington can learn a hell of a lot from what we've done right here in this great state.
And that decision on who will become the next GOP leader in the Senate will be decided on November 13th. So it's safe to say we'll likely be hearing a lot more from U.S. Senator Rick Scott over the coming days. For local coverage, count on live at Bonita Springs. I'm Jake Stofan, Action News Jacks.
Action News Jack's Megan Moriarty picks up our team coverage from Miami at the Debbie Mucarsel-Powell watch party. And this has been a rough night for some Florida Democrats.
Mucarsel-Powell came out here earlier tonight, saying that these were not the results she was hoping for. When asked why she believes she fell short, she pointed to a lack of information among voters. She says in talking with young voters, many didn't know about the amendment, other options for candidates like herself in the Senate race, or basic voting information. In her concession speech, she says their team was not successful in sending a woman who would fight for Florida families to Washington, D.C.
Today we were not successful. We were not successful in making sure that we sent someone up to Washington, D.C. that would protect Medicare and Social Security. We were not successful in sending a champion that would fight for our communities to reduce gun violence.
McCarcel Powell says that she may have lost this battle, but her fight for Florida is far from over. For local coverage you can count on in Miami, Megan Moriarty, Action News Jax.
And millions of Americans cast their ballot today after early voting brought record numbers to some key battleground states like Georgia. Let's take a look. Georgia right now, 81% of the votes counted, and Donald Trump leading with 52% of the vote over Kamala Harris. So, I mean, it's looking like Donald Trump is getting close here, right? He jumped out to an early lead as expected. He took all of Southeast Georgia there, deep red, waiting on those numbers from Atlanta all through the night. But so far, it hasn't been enough to help catch up Kamala Harris to Donald Trump. So currently, Donald Trump with the lead, 5 percentage points in Georgia with 81% of the votes counted so far. Meantime, let's go to Florida, shall we? Florida, well, we already know that Donald Trump won the state of Florida with 56% of the vote. Remember when Florida was a battleground state? Not anymore. This wasn't even close. This was a blowout, 14 percentage point victory. And if you look at Jacksonville, let's see Jacksonville. Donald Trump has pulled ahead, and it looks like he will possibly take Duval County. 95% of the votes counted so far. Trump up by 7,000 votes over Kamala Harris. This was razor thin throughout the evening, but Donald Trump looking like he's pulling away, taking back Duval County from the Democrats back to the GOP. So we'll keep an eye on that. Action Jack's Robert Grant picks up our live team coverage on the North Bank, where the Duval GOP is celebrating a lot of local wins.
Yeah, Ben, really across the board, when you look at all of our local state representatives, also talking about the amendments, both 3 and 4 failed, 5 and 2 passed, something that they were also excited about. I'll take a step out here. You can see hundreds are still out here for this party, as they have been since about 7 o'clock tonight. Doors opened at 6 here at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Jacksonville. Now, we also just heard from Mayor-elect Corey Byland over in Neptune Beach. So the Duval GOP, they're representing and they're hearing from folks from all across the county, not just in Jacksonville. We're also talking about the beaches as well. And then before that, we heard from some council members and Senator Clay Yarborough. Now, a lot of folks are staying out here late tonight because of the presidential race, and they want to stay out to continue watching that because they know it's going to be close. Now, I just spoke with the Duval GOP chair, Dean Black. We're going to hear from him coming up in the next half hour and why he says they've had such a sweep in all of these races. That's coming up. But for now, local coverage you can count on in downtown Jacksonville. I'm Robert Grant, Action News Jax.
Action News Jax. Annette Gutierrez picks up our live team coverage. She's in St. Nicholas, and Annette, Democrats were hoping for some surprises tonight.
Tanika, a lot of losses tonight. Legalizing marijuana failed. Interfering, or the abortion amendment has failed. Now, of course, Florida has also lost the Duval Democratic Party regarding the presidential race. However, the folks here, they're still holding out on hope when it comes to the national voting results. And of course, I just want to step away there. You can see some people are here on the stage. We actually have city council member who is on stage talking about encouraging the voters to hold out on that hope. You can see we have some cheers. People are here still celebrating the small wins. We know that Angie Nixon, Florida State House District 13, won her re-election, and Tracy Davis, Florida State Senate District 5, won hers. Now, LaShonda Holloway, she was also here. She lost to Aaron B., representative in Congress District 4. So those are what we're working on right now. Of course, we will have more on the presidential race. That is what the Duval Democratic Party says they are still waiting on. That's what they're encouraged about. But for now, local coverage from Canada, reporting live in Cuba Libre, Annette Gutierrez, Action News Jax.
I'm Action News Jax Chief Meteorologist Mike Burrish. Rafael has gone hurricane as expected over the Caribbean. I'll track its movement and an uptick in showers right here at home. Timing it out for you in the First Alert forecast.
We're taking a live look out at Donald Trump's watch party in West Palm Beach. A lot of smiles right there. Of course, Donald Trump winning the state of Florida tonight. Donald Trump is across the water, across the Intracoastal at Mar-a-Lago on Palm Beach, watching the results there. It's expected he will show up in West Palm Beach tonight for the results.
One of the big surprises for some of the night, Amendment 4 was called relatively early. The amendment to add abortion protections to the Florida Constitution failed. It is the first abortion amendment in the nation to fail since Roe v. Wade, was overturned. And a big reason was because it needed 60% to pass, and you can see here 57% of the vote went towards that. The Florida Women's Freedom Coalition, which is fighting to guarantee access to abortion in Florida, released a statement saying, quote, "It is a dark day in Florida's history. Floridians will continue to live under the extreme near-total abortion ban that puts women's lives in danger, and doctors will continue to be pushed out of our state as they risk criminal prosecution for treating patients who seek their professional care." On the other side, the National Right to Life says, quote, "By rejecting Amendment 4, Floridians saw through the lies and deceptions of the abortion industry-backed effort to legalize late-term abortion, remove parental consent, and open the door to force taxpayer-funded abortions."
Amendment 3, the constitutional amendment, which would have legalized recreational marijuana, also failed tonight. Failed to meet that 60% mark, even though both presidential candidates supported it. Smart and Safe Florida, the largest pro-Amendment 3 group, conceded the race, saying they're still going to try to work with the governor on decriminalizing recreational marijuana for adults.
And here's how the presidential race is stacking up right now. You can see in the race to 270, Kamala Harris with 109 for the Electoral College, and Donald Trump sitting at 200. And, you know, he also took the state of Florida. And remember, the number of electorate votes that a candidate needs, again, is 270.
And there's a lot at stake in this election.
A CNN exit poll shows roughly 3/4 of voters overall believe democracy in the U.S. is under threat. 1/4 of people say that it's secure, and nearly 4 in 10 Americans say that democracy is very threatened. Shannon Butler picks up our live team coverage in West Palm Beach at the Convention Center at former President Trump's watch party. And Shannon, what's the latest there?
Yeah, you can hear the cheers here at the Trump campaign behind me. If you look, you can see this is such a more crowded room than the last time I saw you. More and more people filing in here. What took so long was the security measures that are at this convention center right now. Given the assassination attempts on Trump, they were taking no chances today. It took hours for people to get into this room. You can see the sea of red MAGA hats right here. You actually get those as you walk through the door here at the convention center. There is a lot of excitement here as they're seeing some favorable races for them, especially when you look at that huge win in Florida. Even here, they couldn't believe just how wide that margin was for the Sunshine State. This is a long way to go tonight, and folks here know that. They are optimistic. They believe in the former president. The former president told us earlier today that he was confident that he would win this race. He just wasn't sure when that would be. He said he didn't think that it would be called tonight, given some issues in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and now even in Nevada. So he said he wasn't sure he'd even make it to the convention center, at least for now. But we do know that he is at Mar-a-Lago right now with a smaller party with close friends and families, people like Elon Musk. That's where he is now, and we're hoping that he will make his way to the convention center here, for all of these people who are waiting to hear from the former president. But again, we just don't know when that will be, because we are expecting this to be a very, very long night. For now, we're live in West Palm Beach. Shannon Butler, Action News, Jax.
And we're taking a live look at Howard University, one of the oldest historically black universities in the United States. And it's also Vice President Kamala Harris's alma mater, where she's watching the results come in this evening. And Action News Jax Kirsten Harris is live in Washington right now. Kirsten, what can we expect from the Harris election night headquarters?
Yeah, well,
Well, Ben, excuse me, sorry. See, I blanked out for a second because it's been a long night here in D.C., but I should say that Howard University is really a place that is near and dear to the vice president's heart. This is where she really got her start in politics, and that's because she says during a radio interview earlier today, she says she ran for her first run of office would be the freshman class representative at Howard University. So a lot of eyes watching what will happen tonight, because if she is able to pull off a win tonight, then if she gives a victory speech there, it would be a full circle moment. Now, earlier today, the vice president was campaigning up until the last minute. She started on the phones talking to radio stations in battleground states, places like Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. She was urging voters to get out there and cast their ballots. Then here in D.C., she made a surprise appearance at the DNC headquarters where she hopped on and did some phone banking. And while she was there, some reporters asked her how she was feeling, and Harris replied, quote, "Gotta talk to voters." So clearly you could see she was just trying to make sure she was getting out her message, making sure she was talking to any last minute undecided voters. Ben?
Well, Kirsten, there's 7 battleground states, and right now Donald Trump's leading in Georgia, leading in North Carolina, leading in Wisconsin, leading in Pennsylvania. Those are 4 of the 7. Tell us the big picture here.
Yeah, that's right. So we're watching how some of these Sun Belt states are starting to turn for Donald Trump already. And now all eyes are really shifting to what's left of these blue wall states. Those states are going to be must win for Harris. So we are talking about that Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Obviously, the results could change quickly in those 3 states. Right now, we'll be closely watching to see where things happen from there. Also, we'll head out west to the rest of those Sun Belt states, Nevada and Arizona. We'll be watching to see what happens in those states as well. But the Harris campaign will be closely watching those blue wall states. Those will be key. If she wants to win the White House, blue wall will have to turn blue for the Harris campaign. So we'll see where it goes from here, Ben. But as you said, already a couple of those states are trending red for Donald Trump.
Now, it's the Chief, Jacksonville's most accurate chief meteorologist, Mike Burrish.
More election coverage, of course, in a couple of minutes, but tracking the tropics tonight, we have now Hurricane Rafael upgraded as expected, moving through the Cayman Islands right now, and will be making a beeline for the western portions of Cuba. This is the updated forecast track just in. Expected to hit Cuba as at least a Category 2 hurricane, then a turn toward the west, staying rather strong before a turn more to the north again, and weakening at this point because the conditions just are not near as favorable over the central and northern Gulf of Mexico to maintain Rafael. So it'll weaken as it moves toward the central Gulf Coast over the weekend. For us, no direct local impacts, but there will be scattered showers increasing later tonight and through the day tomorrow. Right now on 5 Sweep First Alert Doppler HD, it's pretty quiet. Showers are primarily offshore, but will make a move toward the coast by morning as temperatures stay unseasonably warm overnight in the 70s and quite humid too. Here at 7 in the morning, there are those few scattered showers, so the morning commute in some spots will have some rain and then scattered showers throughout the day. There'll be plenty of breaks as well, but some of these showers will be tropical downpours, and the heaviest rain centered no doubt to the north and west of Jacksonville throughout the day tomorrow and into the day on Thursday, but at least some rain at times for most areas as these tropical-like showers continue to spread quickly to the north and to the northwest, and that will last through Thursday before diminishing again by Friday into your weekend, always in view in the First Alert 7-day forecast, and it stays very warm then for the Jags kickoff Sunday afternoon right through Veterans Day early next week. All of your latest First Alert weathers at actionnewsjax.com, and you can download for free the First Alert Weather app.
We now return to Action News Jack's coverage of Election Night 2024.
And we want to welcome you as we track the big local races in our area. I'm Tanika Hughes.
I'm Ben Becker. Let's get right out to our key races. First off, Florida Amendment 3, the legalization of marijuana, it went down. 56 to 44% said yes, but it needed 60% to pass, so that fails. Amendment 4 will restore abortion access to the standard of Roe v. Wade. That also went down. 57% said yes, but again, it needed 60% to pass. And looking at the Senate race, Rick Scott reelected to another 6 years, 56% of the vote against Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. He wins by 13 percentage points. Now to the North Bank, where we find Robert Grant at the Florida GOP Watch Party. Robert, Republicans very happy this evening.
And Ben, the Duval GOP just announced that Duval County voted for Donald Trump. They say they've turned what was a purple county red, and it's because of all the efforts they say they put in over the several years. I'll take a step out. You can see here behind me, as there's still hundreds of people here behind us as they're watching now the presidential race. Coming up in just a bit, we're going to hear from Chairman Dean Black as well, and why he thinks they've turned the tide now to a red county here in Duval. For local coverage you can count on in downtown Jacksonville, Robert Grant, Action News Jax.
Action News Jax. Annette Gutierrez is in St. Nicholas. And Annette, the Dems couldn't ink out a victory tonight.
Tanika, it's a laundry list of losses for the Duval Democratic Party here. We have the Senate race, the Amendments 3 and 4. We have even the presidential race here in Florida. They didn't win. However, they are still holding out on that key race for the nation. And I just want to step aside. You can actually see that the numbers here are dwindling. A lot of empty seats here at Cuba Libre. As people start to head home, they're still holding out on hope, but they're going to go watch it from their TVs at home. But of course, you can stay with Action News Jax as we give you all the election coverage from right here. For local coverage you can count on, reporting live in Cuba Libre, Annette Gutierrez, Action News Jax.
And an update on the race for sheriff in Clay County. Incumbent Michelle Cook will stay there, remain sheriff, taking 79% of the vote over former sheriff Daryl Daniels. Cook has been the sheriff there since 2020. Daniels was removed from office that same year. He was accused of trying to destroy evidence to hide an affair, but was later acquitted.
We're going to be with you throughout the evening, tracking races across Florida and the country.
We're live right now on Fox 30. You can always watch us streaming live on actionnewsjax.com. All three St. Johns County Commissioner races have been called for District 1 County Commissioner between Trump-endorsed Christian Whitehurst and Taylor Onthrop. Now, Onthrop was a write-in, had no website, and spent no money in the race, and Whitehurst took that race easily.
For County Commissioner District 3, incumbent Clay Murphy won against Fitch McGraw. McGraw was also a write-in, had no website, spent no money on the campaign, so wasn't expected to do really anything at all.
And there in District 5, Ann Taylor beat out Merrill Paul Rowland 79% to 21%. Taylor is HOA president and beat out that current Commissioner Henry Dean in a primary.
Welcome back to this election night. Action News Jax at 10. I'm Ben Becker. Two hotly contested amendments have both failed.
Amendments to legalize marijuana and expand abortion access didn't hit that 60% mark. Both were harshly opposed by Governor DeSantis, who toured the campaign. to campaign against both. Action News Jack's Emily Turner joins us now. She's been with our team of election experts breaking down what's happened throughout the evening. Emily.
Yeah, it has been fun up here tonight. Now, always agreeing, but always being respectful. We're going to start with the presidential election and specifically with Duval County. Dr. Binder, when it comes to the numbers and how tight that was, is that a surprise based on the early voting turnout and the number of Republican versus Democrats?
Yeah, Republicans turned out Democrats here in Duval. And typically in Florida, you know, the NPAs might lean a little bit to the right. But the fact that it was so close, it was under that turnout margin, means that either the Democrats are peeling off more NPAs than usual or turning some Republicans in their favor, at least here in Duval.
And we're seeing, you know, a tight race on the national. We're sitting here watching state by state. I mean, when you look at this map, at least where it stands now, what does this tell you about where each party stands?
I mean, I think it's a close election, and we've known this for months now, and I don't think that's changed. You know, I think maybe if you're in Trump world, you might be a little more optimistic. Some of those blue wall states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin are maybe closer than you would have liked, but it's hard to know because we don't know what they've done with mail ballots in Pennsylvania. Are they coming out because they're so heavily Democrat? You know, we have a long way to go yet. Don't go thinking just because it's 50.1 to 49.9 in one state that it's going to stay that way, because different votes are coming in from different parts of the state.
And depending on what happens based on the presidential election, that could mean very different things for Jacksonville. Lenny Curry, what's the Jacksonville turnout here if Trump wins the presidency?
Well, the very top of the Trump campaign is Susie Wiles, who is from Jacksonville. She lives here when she's not running a presidential campaign. And Brian Hughes is top of that orbit as well. He's very far up on the org chart. Brian ran my first campaign for mayor. He was the chief administrative officer for me here in Jacksonville. So those are two, I mean, could be on the inside, could be working for the president in the White House if he wins this election. Good for Jacksonville.
All right. And then on the opposite side of the ticket, Kamala Harris. What's the connection with Jacksonville, and what does that look like for us here?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Democratic mayor, and so also just hoping that a win, with a Harris win all across the country will be great to just ensure that often marginalized communities have the resources that they need to no longer just survive, but to actually push and try to thrive and work their way into flourishing, right? It's just a shame that we often have to break things down by party and who's in office and who's in leadership. Why do folks have to be so vindictive? Why aren't we looking out for the overall well-being of everyone, despite what party they're in? And so I know that based on the words that have come out of the vice president's mouth, if she is to lead, she's going to be the leader of all of us, right? And she's going to look out for all of us, not just whether or not it's a Democratic county or a Democratic state, but even if it's a red state, she's going to look out for all of Americans.
And we still have a long way to go, but what do you think the chances are we know who the President of the United States is tonight?
If you count tonight at midnight, 0. If you count tonight at before 6 a.m., maybe. But I still think, Wednesday is probably a better guess about when we might have a sense.
A lot of votes still left to count, a lot of night left when it comes to the election. So we're going to send it back down to you guys in the studio, but we'll keep talking up here.
All right, let's take a look at Amendment 3 in Florida, a big race that a lot of folks watched. This was the amendment to legalize recreational marijuana. It did not pass, needed 60% of the vote, and you can see it only got 55%. But let's take a closer look here in Duval County to see how we voted locally. Duval County did cross that 60% threshold. A different picture if we go north to Nassau County, where they were only at just under 50%. But again, overall, that amendment to legalize recreational marijuana, a no-go in Florida. Another big amendment that a lot of people were watching, even across the country, was the right to an abortion in Florida. This countering that 6-week ban, it also did not pass. So let's take a look here in Duval County. It needed 60% to pass across the state in Duval County, 58.4%. And let's go south in St. Johns County. Let's see, it got yes was 49%. So right along what we expected here in our local area. But again, 2 major amendments did not pass. Also, Amendment 1 was asking voters to vote yes or no on making school board races in Florida partisan. That also failed. It would have required candidates to put Democrat or Republican next to their names. Supporters say the measure would give voters more information on who they were voting for, but opponents thought that it would bring culture wars and politics into schools. And this is how that race ended. Again, not making it across that threshold, getting 55% of the vote. Amendment 2 did pass. It adds the right to fish and hunt in the state constitution. Supporters say that it will prevent hunting and fishing from being criminalized, but animal rights activists and environmental groups raise concerns that it would make it harder to protect wildlife, and the total vote for that, 67%.
Now, results in the presidential race are coming in from Georgia right now. You take a look. Donald Trump still leading 51% to 48% over Kamala Harris. About 80+% of the precincts reporting so far. No surprise you see blue around Atlanta and some of the other larger cities, but mostly red across the board there. Donald Trump led early and often, including Southeast Georgia. He's maintained that lead right now. This has not been called yet, but Donald Trump definitely has a lead of about 150,000 votes right now. And today, Georgia election officials said more than 900,000 voters cast the ballot. Republicans say they're cautiously optimistic about their chances of winning this key battleground state. Action News Jack's Nicholas Brooks spoke with the Glynn County Director of Elections, who says the county saw an impressive voter turnout.
Channel says this year's election exceeded his office's turnout expectation with a 2% increase from 2020 election. Channel reports that out of 51,214 registered voters, 42,900 cast their ballots. This brings Glynn County's voter turnout to 70%, a jump from the 68% turnout seen in the 2020 election.
We've got 16 out of our 17 have already voted over 50%. We only have one precinct, and it's traditionally a low voting precinct that's under 50%. But we do have 4 of our largest precincts that are pushed over 80%.
He said all 17 voting locations had a steady flow of thousands of people casting their ballots Tuesday morning.
We exceeded some of the expectations that we had. Our voter registration total is down about 700 from what it was in 2020. And we've exceeded the numbers from 2020 with fewer voters. So the turnout's been real good.
The director also pointed out that 4 of the county's larger precincts pushed well over 80% voter turnout. Earlier today, I spoke with voters who laid out the issues that they want the next president to address, whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. For local coverage you can count on, I'm Nicholas Brooks, Action News Jax.
Members of Congress are also on the ballot in all 50 states, and the balance of power could tip either way. 34 seats on the ballot for Senate, including Florida Senator Rick Scott, who won tonight. The Senate currently controlled by Democrats by a slim 2-seat margin. So far, Republicans have gained 1 Senate seat. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives are up for grabs. Right now, Republicans hold the chamber with a slim 4 seats. Democrats hoping to chip away at that razor-thin margin with races in New York and California.
And Action News Jack's Robert Grant picks up our live coverage. Robert, a lot to celebrate for Florida Republicans tonight.
Yeah, Ben, all of the local state representative races, all those incumbents that were running, Republicans who won. We're also looking at Amendment 3 and Amendment 4, which failed. All things that the Duval GOP is happy about here at the Hyatt Regency downtown. You can see still packed here tonight as they're still closely watching the presidential race. Now, one big announcement made about 15 or 20 minutes ago talking about the fact that Duval County voted for Donald Trump. They're saying they've turned Duval red. You know, Duval was previously a very purple county. In fact, Democrats previously had really the advantage here. The Duval GOP saying they've turned the tide. I spoke to the chairman of the GOP party here in Duval County just a little bit ago. Here's what he had to say about tonight's victories.
I mean, we've got victory after victory after victory just rolling in. I mean, we have established a real conservative 5-2 majority on the school board. That's a big deal in a major American city.
Amendment 2 and Amendment 5 also passed, and that's the right to fish and hunt, and also the indexes on homestead exemption for inflation. 2 amendments they're also happy to see now pass. so far. Of course, we'll continue to follow as the presidential race is still very close right now, and that's why you still see so many folks out here. Be back here live again at 11. But for now, with local coverage you can count on in downtown Jacksonville, I'm Robert Grant, Action News Jax.
Annette Gutierrez picks up our live team coverage from St. Nicholas at the Democrat Watch Party.
Tanika, the Duval Democrats are pretty disappointed tonight, especially with all the losses in Florida, from the presidential race, with the red states, from the Senate race, the House races, all of it. But especially, you know, they were actually expecting to see the state go red, but they were really shocked about the amendments for 3, legalizing marijuana, and for 4, the abortion amendment, and they're really disappointed. They said they were really hoping that it would happen. I mean, it was very close. It was almost a 60%, but that was what was required to make that amendment happen. And I just want to show you the numbers here. Not a lot of people. Dwindling numbers, a lot of empty seats, a lot of people are going home pretty upset. And I actually spoke with one person off camera who said that, you know, he was actually pissed and he was going home pretty upset. However, the presidential race is not over yet, and a lot of people say they are still holding on to that hope that the nation will come through for the Harris-Walz campaign. And of course, you can stay with Action News Jax as we give you all of those updates. But for now, for local coverage you can count on, reporting live inside Cuba Libre, Annette Gutierrez, Action News Jax.
From the Action News Jax First Alert Weather Center, I'm TV meteorologist Mike Burrish. Temperatures very mild for this time of the evening. This time of the year still well into the 70s, and high humidity will eventually develop a little bit of rain. I'll time it out for you in the First Alert forecast.
And we're tracking votes across every swing state, including Georgia right now. You can see Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris with 51% of the vote. About 88% of the vote is in, so 88% of the precincts are reporting. You can see the Atlanta area. Those votes are still coming in, by the way, trying to even this thing up if you're a Kamala Harris supporter. But currently, Donald Trump leading by about 120,000 votes, and on his way if he can maintain the lead. Georgia was so close in 2020, and we know how many fake claims came out about election security.
Action News Jack's Audrey Washington continues her team coverage in Atlanta, where hundreds of thousands of votes are still being counted.
I'm Audrey Washington here inside of the Fulton County Elections Hub and Operations Center. I just want to give you a look at what's happening here behind me. This is where election officials are uploading memory cards for advanced voting. We were just briefed by officials, including by the police chief. He told us his department responded to 32 bomb threats against polling locations today. 5 polling places had to be evacuated. Those polling locations stayed open anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes later to compensate for the temporary shutdown. Election officials told us they should have the bulk of the results in by midnight. And that is the very latest. I'm Audrey Washington here in Fulton County, Georgia.
And here's a look at some of the closer races in the U.S. House. This is Florida District 3, which is Baker, Bradford, Columbia, and Union counties. Incumbent Republican Kat Cammack is reelected. 62%, an overwhelming performance for Kat Cammack.
In a repeat of 2022, District 4 once again voted Republican for Aaron Bean over LaShonda Holloway. And this covers Clay, Nassau North, and West Duval counties.
And former JSO Sheriff John Rutherford wins District 5. He's representing South and East Duval County and North St. Johns County, including St. Augustine once again.
And the Florida House District 6 race went to incumbent Mike Waltz with 67% of the vote, victory over James Stockton. And this was Governor DeSantis' old House seat. And again, it will now stay red. In the Duval County School Board race for District 5, Hank Rogers won that seat over Reginald Blount, 56 to 44%. Blount previously led 41% to 40% in the August election. He was endorsed by Moms for Liberty. Rogers was endorsed by local Democrats.
Now let's check out some races in Clay County. The race for school board over there. District 2 goes to Robert Alvaro, 54% of the vote. He's a firefighter and a state guardsman who is supported by the local GOP, while Jim Hughes was a Clay County teacher for 36 years.
An amendment to the state's constitution that will repeal public financing for some statewide campaigns has passed. Let's take a look at that. Current law allows state funding if the candidate agrees to the limit. It did not pass. I'm sorry. It needed 60% of the vote. Supporters say that that money could have been spent elsewhere. Opponents said it will make it harder for people who didn't have money to run. So again, Amendment 6 did not pass. In the race for Fernandina Beach Mayor, James Anton will now take over with 67% of the vote, beating out Darren Askew for that position. Anton was a city commissioner for Seat 4. Askew held city commission Seat 5.
In Columbia County, Fort White's mayor has been unseated. Incumbent Ronald Frazier lost tonight to George Thomas. George Thomas, 54% of the vote, so there's a new mayor in Fort White.
A St. Johns County referendum to continue a half-cent sales tax for the next 10 years passed tonight with that 60% that it needed. You can see there. The sales tax will be used to fund renovations and improvements for schools. It's been in effect since 2015. A referendum to increase property taxes by $1 million also passed with 68% of the vote, and this means $1 will be taxed per every $1,000 of taxable value, and this money will be used to fund higher pay for teachers, nurses, and school programs.
Now, it's the Chief, Jacksonville's most accurate chief meteorologist, Mike Burrish.
Well, a warm, humid day has continued into this evening, but it's still mainly dry on 5 Sweep, first at the top of their HD. There are a few showers that will be moving very near Brunswick over the next hour or so, and there are showers well off to the south and east that will move in later tonight into early tomorrow morning and may be impacting the morning commute, even though it is dry for the moment. And this is Hurricane Rafael, upgraded earlier this evening as expected, moving across western Cuba as at least a Category 2 hurricane during the day on Wednesday into the southern Gulf. For a while, it maintains hurricane strength, but then conditions become far less favorable, expected to weaken a great deal and then drift toward the north later in the weekend. This does not look like a significant hit on the Gulf Coast, even though the forecast cone works its way northward all the way up into southeast Texas and into Louisiana. So the bottom line is that we have the 11th hurricane of the season now here. Its path is into the Gulf of Mexico, where eventually it weakens considerably. No local direct impacts for Jacksonville, northeastern Florida, and southeast Georgia, but we will see an increase in showers because of tropical moisture on the east side of Rafael. As temperatures overnight stay in the 70s, we're in the low 80s by 10 a.m. Unseasonably warm temperatures, and rainfall then for your Wednesday. Starts out with those few scattered showers early on, so some of the morning commute gets some rain spots. Be prepared. By noon, a little bit of a break, and then the showers increase, but will be especially heavy and more concentrated to the north and west of Jacksonville, and that's going to be true through Thursday as well. So there'll be plenty of breaks. This does not look like a big soaker for Jacksonville and northeast Florida, but more so from Lake City to Waycross to Blackshear and nearby areas. So by the time we get to the weekend, we're back into just a few widely scattered showers, otherwise partly sunny and staying warm. So for Porch Fest on Saturday, Springfield, temperatures make it into low 80s during the afternoon. The Jags have the home game Sunday afternoon against the Vikings. It's a very warm and humid day. Temperatures manage to get into the 80s during the game with an east to southeasterly breeze. And there is, again, the risk for at least a few scattered showers. So Duval County and Metro Jacksonville for your Wednesday manages to get into low 80s. It will turn a little cooler with onshore flow by later in the afternoon at the beaches, where it'll be a gusty wind, and therefore rough seas and surf are going to continue, and there will be those scattered showers from time to time, so there is a high rip current risk at our area beaches. We'll continue to see a few showers, but not as much coverage by Friday into your weekend, which is always in view in the First Alert 7-day forecast as the showers become brief again Saturday and Sunday, but those temperatures above average, 80 to 85 degrees. And as we get into early next week, well, Veterans Day looks very warm too in the mid 80s, and that continues into Tuesday near 85 for the high temperature, with a brief shower or two before we finally see what appears to be, potentially at least, a stronger cold front as we get into the middle and end of next week. So your weekend, again, always in view in the First Alert 7-day forecast. It looks quite warm under a partly sunny skies. Temperatures will be warming into the 80s as we get into the afternoon hours on Saturday, dropping off a little bit by 5 p.m. with that sustained east wind. And then Sunday, those temperatures manage to get all the way into the 80s. Well, your latest First Alert weather is at actionnewsjax.com. You can download for free the First Alert weather app, and at actionnewsjax.com, you can always check out the Burrish blog and Talking the Tropics with Mike, and at Mike First Alert on social media, on Twitter or X, and Facebook fan page and Instagram.
Now turning to Nassau County, where all three races for Fernandina Beach Commissioner have been called. Starting with Commissioner seat 1, you see James Anton won with 67% of the vote.
We now return to Action News Jack's coverage of Election Night 2024.
And welcome to our continuing coverage of Election 2024. I'm Ben Becker.
I'm Tanika Hughes. Let's get you caught up on some key races.
That's right. Incumbent Jacksonville Beach Mayor Chris Hoffman's a winner tonight. She gets reelected with 53% of the vote.
In Duval County, Hank Rogers won the School Board District 5 seat over Reginald Blount. He won with 56% of the vote.
And Florida's Amendment 2, the right to hunt and fish, it passed with 66% of the vote. It's one of only 2 amendments that passed. It needed 60% to get there.
In Camden County, incumbent Jim Proctor lost his sheriff's seat to Republican James Kevin Chaney, who took 63% of the vote. Proctor served as sheriff since 2012.
All right, now here's a look at some of the electoral votes, and we're monitoring across the country right now. Donald Trump leading with 210 electoral votes. Kamala Harris at 113. You need 270, right? Remember that. You need 270. So how's this thing breaking down? Well, first off, you got the blue wall. Okay, Kamala Harris needs to win Wisconsin, needs to win Michigan, needs to win Pennsylvania, and she could lose wherever else, just hold serve where she's supposed to hold serve, like Colorado and New Mexico. But as you can see right now, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all leaning red, but a long way to go. So if you're a Harris supporter, you could just hang your hat on the fact that things aren't over yet. But Donald Trump, if you're Donald Trump right now, you have to be feeling pretty good because these 3 are leaning red. Also, Georgia getting very close to going to Trump. North Carolina also looking like it could go to Trump. But again, this is key for Kamala Harris. So Action News Jax has more coverage on election 2024. Stay with us on CBS 47 and Fox 30 as we bring you the latest results.
Live at 11, CBS 47 Fox 30 Action News Jax starts right now.
Now at 11, razor-thin margins in some of tonight's key races.
It matters that we all vote and we all have a say.
Local Republicans celebrate as Florida breaks red for Trump and local candidates,
while Democrats fight to make their voices heard in the state House and Congress.
Tomorrow, this will be a different country, one way or another.
We have live team coverage as voters across Florida, Georgia, and the nation make monumental decisions to shape our history for years to come.
From Action News Jax, this is special coverage on Election Night 2024.
And tonight, you're looking live at the election night parties for both presidential candidates. On the left, Vice President Kamala Harris supporters are gathered at Howard University in Washington, D.C. That's her alma mater. On the right, former President Donald Trump supporters are at the Convention Center in West Palm Beach while he watches the returns come in from Mar-a-Lago on Palm Beach.
And here's the status of the presidential race right now. Much of the electoral map still empty, especially some of those key battleground states where we can see some new numbers just popping up because the polls there on the West Coast did close. And right now the race to 270, Harris sits at 178 and Trump sits at 216. But we do know, again, some of those critical states may not be called for some days. As I just mentioned, the polls closed over on the West Coast. We're still waiting on Alaska and Hawaii. I'm Tanika Hughes.
And I'm Ben Becker. Now we're scrolling the latest vote counts for the local races at the bottom of your screen. We have live team coverage across Florida and Georgia to Washington, D.C. We're tracking the big races that will affect your lives for years to come. The headline is Florida is about the red wave. Florida's electoral votes will go to Donald Trump. And Duval County has flipped back to red after going blue for Biden in 2020 and electing a Democratic mayor last year.
In the Florida U.S. Senate race, Republican and incumbent Senator Rick Scott came out ahead of Democrat and former Representative Debbie Mucarsel-Powell.
And 2 of the 6 proposed constitutional amendments got a lot of attention in the run-up to Election Day. Amendment 3 would have legalized recreational marijuana use by adults in Florida. The amendment did not get the 60% vote needed to be approved.
And while a majority of Florida voters supported Amendment 4 to end government restrictions on abortion in Florida, the amendment still fell short of the 60% that it needed to pass. It is the first ballot measure victory for abortion opponents in any state since Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Now, Duval County flipped red tonight. Local and state Republicans came out on top of most of the races in Northeast Florida. We have live team coverage. Action News Jack's Annette Gutierrez is live with Duval Democrats, but we begin with Action News Jack's Robert Grant at the Duval Republican Watch Party in downtown. Robert, a lot of happy GOP members this evening.
Yeah, Ben, tonight the Duval GOP is celebrating. That's after they say they turned a purple county red and announced that Duval County voted for Donald Trump. I'll take a step out. You can see they are still watching the presidential race very closely here. Dozens still left behind after doors opened at the Hyatt Regency downtown just around 7 o'clock tonight. Now, the Republicans also swept the board in all of our local state representative races as well. Aaron Bean and John Rutherford also won in Congress. And then you have Amendment 3 and 4, both defeated, and local Republicans are celebrating that tonight.
We like what we're seeing. We like what we're seeing here locally. We like what we're seeing statewide. We also like to see Amendments 3 and 4 go down in defeat.
We're finally more organized, and we're making a bigger movement than before, and I think we have more enthusiasm and excitement.
And we worked really hard to turn this county red, and we did it tonight. We just heard from our chairman, Dean Black.
You also hear a lot of voters for the Duval GOP saying that the party is now more organized here locally than it has in years past. Now, as I said, dozens still here watching that presidential race. Doors close here at 11:30 tonight. With local coverage you can count on in downtown Jacksonville, I'm Robert Graham, Action News Jax.
All right, thanks, Robert. We now turn to Action News Jax. Annette Gutierrez live at the Duval Democratic Watch Party in Spring Park. And Annette, this was a Duval downer.
Ben, indeed, it was a Duval downer. There was a lot of disappointment for the Duval Democratic Party, and I just want to step away so that you can see not a lot of people are left. You know, around 7 o'clock, there were dozens of people, but now we're left with about 4. But from the statewide amendments to the local races to even the presidential vote in Florida, the Democrats came up short. And in the school board race as well, the Duval Democrats say they wanted Hank Rogers to win, but that didn't happen. And there were some small wins, though. Angie Nixon will remain as the representative for the House District 13, and Tracy Davis will remain Florida State Senate District 5. Now, I spoke with the North Florida Central Labor Council Vice President, who said he was expecting the red votes for most of the races, but not for the amendments. The votes required at least a 60% majority to legalize marijuana and to limit government interference on abortion. Well, that didn't happen.
Well, as I stated earlier today, I wasn't too much concerned about 3 because I don't smoke marijuana. But 4, I'm very disappointed. I am mad as hell on 4.
Despite the losses in Florida, the Democrats here say they are still holding out on one key race, the presidential one. And of course, you can stay with Action News Jax for all the updates on what those results end up being. But for now, for local coverage you can count on, reporting live inside Cuba Libre, Annette Gutierrez, Action News Jax.
The incumbent secured the win in the U.S. Senate race early in the night. Republican Rick Scott came out on top, and he wants to lead Senate Republicans when they pick a new leader next year. He defeated Democrat Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. Team coverage continues with Action News Jax' Megan Moriarty. She spent the night at the Mucarsel-Powell campaign event in Miami. But we're going to start with Action News Jax' Jake Stofan. He is with the Scott campaign in Bonita Springs. And Jake, Scott pulled out a larger victory than even some polls predicted.
Yeah, well, that's right. It was an early night here at Camp Scott with the senator taking the stage to deliver his victory speech before 9 p.m., the first time he's ever been able to do that so quickly. Polling had him up by 5 headed into this evening, but he managed to pull out a decisive 13-point victory. The U.S. Senator Rick Scott is fresh off his first statewide win with a margin of greater than 2 points since first running for office in 2010. Scott addressed that fact at the beginning of his speech, noting, quote, "For once we did it before midnight." Scott already has his eye on another election, though, saying he plans to run for Republican Majority Leader in the U.S. Senate. He said Florida should be an example for Republicans across the country, and especially in Washington, D.C.
We need a Republican Party to start solving the problems of this country, and we have a significant number of problems. Florida is the center of the Republican Party of this country. Washington could learn a hell of a lot from what we've done right here in this great state.
And the decision on who will be the next senator to lead the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, that will happen on November 13th. So it's safe to say we'll probably hear a lot more from Senator Scott over the coming days. For local coverage, you can count on live in Bonita Springs. I'm Jake Stofan, Action News Jax.
All right, thanks, Jake. Action News Jax' Megan Moriarty, as I said, was at the Democratic Watch Party for Senate candidate Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, who conceded the race earlier tonight.
It was an early night here for the Mucarsel-Powell team in Miami. The Democratic candidate coming out saying that this was not the result that she was hoping for. Previously, it looked like it was a tight race, but U.S. Senator Rick Scott had a nearly 13% lead over Mucarsel-Powell.
As you all know, the results that we just saw right now are not the results that we were expecting.
She says in talking with young voters, many didn't know about the amendment, other options for candidates like herself in the Senate race, or basic voting information. In her concession speech, she says their team was not successful in sending a woman who would fight for Florida families to Washington, D.C.
We were not successful in sending a woman, a mom, who would be fighting every single day for our daughters and women in the state of Florida to protect their reproductive freedom.
Mucarsel-Powell says that she may have lost this battle, but her fight for Florida is far from over. For local coverage you can count on in Miami, Megan Moriarty, Action News Jax.
And here's a look at the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Now, before the election, Democrats had a 51-49 advantage. Now, Senator Scott needs to convince his fellow Republicans to let him lead the party in the Senate.
And going into this election, Republicans had an 8-seat advantage in the House with 3 vacant seats. Here's a look at the balance of power in the House right now. You can see the Republicans leading 155 to 104. They've gained 2 seats while the Democrats have lost 2 so far. So let's talk about locally, right? In House District 3, including Baker, Bradford, Columbia, and Union counties, incumbent Republican Kat Cammack wins a 3rd term in the House. Here you go, 61% of the vote. But you can see Alachua County right there, not a big surprise. That went for Democrat Tom Wells. All right, so we go to District 4 now. District 4, Aaron Bean wins again, a 2nd term tonight. Wins in Nassau and Clay counties. He defeated Democrat LaShonda Holloway. This was a rematch, beat her 2 years ago, beat her again tonight. Now, she did win the vote in Western and Northern Duval County. Again, that's not a surprise. District 5, John Rutherford, the former sheriff, he wins again. The Republican congressman wins a 5th term in the House tonight. He defeats Democrat Jay McGovern. Very easy for him. And finally, District 6, Michael Waltz is a winner. This includes St. John's, Putnam, and Waltz winning a 4th term this evening. And his name has been floated as a possible Secretary of Defense in a Trump administration. Waltz defeated Democrat James Stockton.
Georgia's 1st congressional district covers all 6 counties in southeast Georgia. Republican Buddy Carter won a 6th term in the House tonight, beating out Democrat Patty Hewitt.
And Florida voters projected efforts to ensure abortion access and legalization of recreational marijuana. A closer look at what that vote means.
And Georgia voters have a big voice in deciding who's heading to the White House. A report on the counting underway in the Peach State.
From the Action News Jax First Alert Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Mike Burrish. As expected, Rafael has gone hurricane this evening, headed toward Cuba first, and then it's into the Gulf of Mexico, tracking the tropics and an increase in our local rain. And your First Alert forecast after the break.
We now return to Action News Jax coverage of Election Night 2024.
Voting was disrupted at 32 of Georgia's 177 polling places tonight. There were 7 threats around 6 o'clock. There were also a series of threats in the morning. According to the Secretary of State, the FBI tracked the earlier threats back to sources in Russia. Most experts say the presidential election will be decided by a handful of swing states. Georgia is one of them. Southeast Georgia, reliably Republican red, but there are some Democratic strongholds around Metro Atlanta, Savannah, Augusta, and Columbus. Action News Jax Justin Gray has a look at the effort to count the votes in Georgia.
We're at Georgia's election headquarters where the Secretary of State's office already has millions of votes that have been reported and made public. All those early votes and absentee ballots were required by state law to be reported by counties to the state by 8 p.m. Most of those have made it in. Now it's those election day ballots. We're told 5.2 million Georgians voted this year. That is a record topping 2020. Those election day ballots, they have to make it a memory stick by hand to their county election offices to be inputted. That will take time. Those are going to be cycling in throughout the evening. Reporting in Atlanta, I'm Justin Gray.
Now, Florida Secretary of State Cord Byrd of Neptune Beach says he's confident in the security and accuracy of Florida's election. He spoke with reporters earlier tonight.
I am most proud of the high level of voter confidence in Florida's election process. As we look forward to the next election, Floridians can remain confident in their elections because we will continue to ensure that elections are administered according to Florida law and the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees one citizen, one vote.
Now for some expert analysis on tonight's election and what we can learn from the outcomes that we're seeing. Action Jack's Emily Turner is with UNF political science professor Michael Binder.
Now, when it comes to the ballot measures, let's talk specifically about what's happening in Florida and the amendments. There were some surprises that came out of specifically 3 and 4.
Yeah, so they've been polling well leading up to the month or so before the election when Ron DeSantis really pressured and really campaigned against these measures, and it brought him under. And the really surprising factor was the abortion amendment, Amendment 4, pulled higher than Amendment 3, the recreational marijuana. And that was kind of surprising because most of the polling ahead of time had the marijuana polling ahead of abortion.
Yeah, and so more people clearly were in favor of abortion than marijuana. But it's interesting, too, from a presidential standpoint, how that stacked up.
Right, and that's the thing, right? Both of them were above 50%. So if we were thinking about democracy and majoritarian rule, these things would be what Floridians wanted. But you need 60 in Florida. But ironically, you know, Trump did better than the marijuana initiative that he endorsed, and you'd expect there to be a lot of Democratic votes in that there. And this is something that, you know, people are voting for president and maybe voting differently for an amendment that the presidential candidate endorsed.
There's quite a bit of crossing party lines in some of this. When it comes to the presidential election, I mean, we're watching all these states, these key swing states come in. Obviously, Trump took Florida, but what about some of these other spots?
Well, Georgia and North Carolina were on the edge, and those look like they're going to go to Trump. But the blue wall is looking kind of pinkish. And again, right, it's early. There's a lot of mail ballots to come in. There's some urban areas that haven't come all the way in yet. But, you know, this is looking more like 2016 than it is 2020. But still, it's early. This election is far from over, and we need all these votes to be counted.
All right. Well, it's going to be a long night ahead for us. Thank you so much, Dr. Binder. Back to you guys.
Let's take a look at the county-by-county vote and the 2 amendments. Let's start here in Florida. Let's look at Amendment 3 on that ballot measure they were just discussing to legalize recreational marijuana. Again, it failed statewide. It didn't get that 60% that it needed to pass. But in Duval County, it did cross that 60% threshold in Duval County. And it also had support further south in Broward County, Monroe County, Pinellas County, and also in Leon County, the state capital. And for Amendment 4, this was trying to enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution, also failed in the state of Florida. In Duval County, it did reach 58.4% support, and there was also support in Florida's largest cities, but a lot of no votes in rural areas, and you can see here in the Panhandle especially.
Now, it's the Chief, Jacksonville's most accurate chief meteorologist, Mike Burish.
We continue to track the tropics as Rafael makes its move to the northwest, became a hurricane as expected during the evening, and is now strengthening through the Cayman Islands and headed for western portions of Cuba. It is at least a Category 2 hurricane. It should strengthen quite a bit overnight and into the day tomorrow, and then it's into the Gulf of Mexico, where it remains fairly strong initially, but then the conditions become far less favorable. It'll weaken, and then it begins to drift toward the north, toward the Gulf Coast area. This does not look like a big hit on the U.S., and obviously far to the west of Jacksonville, northeastern Florida, Florida and southeast Georgia, so few impacts locally. However, on its eastern side here, there's a lot of tropical moisture that'll be surging northward the next couple of days, so there will be an uptick in rainfall, although even that in the end, the total rainfall amounts don't look to be all that great for most of the area, more significant north and west of Jacksonville. And right now, there are a few showers well offshore, but it's mainly dry, very warm and humid night. Rain is increasing now across central and eastern portions of Florida here right into Daytona Beach, or soon to be into Daytona. And this is that tropical moisture that'll be surging northward through the day tomorrow. And a few showers will likely be around for the morning commute. Scattered, but don't be surprised if you encounter a little bit of rain. And there are those unseasonable temperatures that are already by 10 a.m. be near, if not above, 80 degrees. Here are those few scattered showers that'll be near the coast and extending inland to I-95 at 7 a.m. and then quickly moving to the north and northwest as new showers develop from time to time. It's not a washout, though. And you can see the heavier rain, the brighter colors off to the west of Jacksonville, and that'll sort of be the axis of heaviest rain the next couple of days. It's more scattered and on and off for Jacksonville, northeastern Florida, and coastal portions of southeastern Georgia. And we could use the rain, but the amounts just don't look to be all that great in the end for most of the area from about Jacksonville southward. Now, it says barely measurable, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get some quarter to half inch amounts in parts of Duval County. Much, much more when you go to the north and west from the Panhandle right up through central and eastern portions of Georgia, just to the north and west. It's much more scattered for the rest of the area. As your First Alert 7-day forecast shows those warm temperatures with just a brief shower right into your weekend, always in view in the First Alert 7-day forecast. A very warm Jags game and Veterans Day. Well, the latest First Alert weather is at actionnewsjax.com. You can download for free the First Alert weather app tomorrow morning. Garrett Beanbaugh with the First Alert forecast.
Jacksonville's partisan divide is deeper than ever. What a discussion between two experts revealed tonight.
All right, so the AP breaking news is called North Carolina for Donald Trump, showing more than 50% of the vote. So North Carolina goes to Donald Trump. We're waiting on the results from 6 other battleground states, including Georgia. Another live look at the presidential watch parties right now. Washington, D.C. on the left for Kamala Harris, West Palm Beach for Donald Trump. They may be waiting a while. We'll see how things break down. The election is so tight, it's highly likely we won't be able to project a winner this evening.
Now, about 90 minutes ago on the Action News Jax live stream, Action News Jax Emily Turner had a discussion with a team of experts and politicians and touched on the deep partisan divide in Northeast Florida.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats believe that Trump supporters are trash. This cycle, last cycle, it was deplorables, right? That's how Trump supporters are viewed. And I also think what you're going to find when this election's over is people are going to be surprised by demographics that typically vote Democrat are going to have voted for President Trump in this election.
All right,
That's coming.
Final thoughts. All right, Angie Nixon, go ahead.
We don't think Trump voters are trash. We think Trump is trash.
President
I just
said
want
it.
to. I want to be clear about that. And Trump's participants in his rally called American citizens trash, literally, right? And he didn't speak out against that. Do not get me started on rhetoric, Mayor Curry, because the rhetoric of your party caused 3 members of my community to get slaughtered in my district because you basically just have a governor and a party who continually attacks and villainizes the teaching of things like true African American history. They devalue Black lives, and you're putting targets on our backs. There were young men, young boys at Neptune Beach with machetes. We don't see Kamala Harris's supporters walking around with machetes. The audacity. You all should be so outraged. And those were the children. So imagine the household that they come out of. I fear for my daughter's life. That is wild to me. And for you to say we have the rhetoric out of our mouths because we called y'all trash, y'all are walking around with machetes, your children. Chastise them. Look inward at your party and tell them to stop with the rhetoric and the lies and the blatant disinformation.
And just to be clear, when you talk about lives lost, are you talking about the Dollar General shooting?
Yes, the Dollar General shooting, yes. Because constantly you have an attack on woke. Stop woke. What does woke mean? Honestly, that attack is basically on blackness.
That was a tragic day in Jacksonville's history, for sure. To blame Governor DeSantis is just below the belt. But, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. It's a free country.
And do you have any rebuttals to some of the rhetoric that she's talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, you just said that you don't think Trump voters are trash, and the party tried to clear it up, but President Biden said it out loud. It was on television. You can look it up online, so it happened.
And we're going to be back with another look at tonight's top contest.
Stay with us.